What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Wager Alarm live stream. I'm your host, Howard Bender. With me, of course, Craig Mish. And here we go, baby. This is what it's all about, Craig. It's week one of the NFL season. It is, well, sort of week one, week two, actually, now, of the college football season.
Yeah, week two.
It's unbelievable.
Well, yeah,
Time passing.
Yeah, we missed you last week. You didn't miss anything special in case you missed it. It was, I think in all the time that we've been doing this, it could have been my worst performance against the spread. And mostly because, and everybody watched the game on Saturday night. The games were really wacky. You don't make excuses about it. But, man, Oregon really had the game won on Saturday. And some really poor coaching and clock management costed them. And then Auburn threw a touchdown very late in the game in that to win. But I thought Dan Servidito did a nice job filling in for you. Picked a couple of winners, including Boston College winning outright against Virginia Tech, and he had Houston covering against Oklahoma. I didn't think that was going to happen. Oklahoma went up 21-0, and then Houston was able to edge back in. So he did a good job while you were out. But as you said, this is the week that it really counts for us because we are in the Golden Nugget 2019 football contest, where we have to submit 7 games against the spread, which we will tell you which way we decided to go when we come back every Friday on the live stream. And then in addition to that, we also have to make our final decisions for the Las Vegas Super Contest, which you and I performed very well at last year. So I'm sure that we'll talk theory. We'll talk kind of how to properly do this. We'll have more college games, I'm assuming, in the Golden Nugget contest than we do in the Westgate Super Contest. But it does give us an opportunity, really, I think, to hone in on a couple of really strong games in the NFL as well each week, too, because we'll probably have some duplicate picks. But we'll take a look at what the spreads are. The Circa is the one that's putting out the spreads for the Golden Nugget. They could be different than what the Super Contest spreads are. Of course, the Super Contest spreads come out on Wednesday, and that's it. The lines are what they are on Wednesday, so they could be different on Thursday. We'll just have to kind of see how it goes. But for this week and weeks moving forward here on the live stream, for those of us who followed last year, in general, because we do these on Tuesday and Friday, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Howard, out of doing it like 20 weeks, there may have been only a couple of weeks where we weighed in on the Thursday and Friday games. We gave opinions and leans, but we more or less saved our picks for Saturday and Sunday. So we did one last week because of the Utah game. We ended up winning that one, thankfully. The only win we had last week, so that was a win. But, yeah, we'll touch on some college games for this week. We'll take a look at the early lines for the NFL. And then make sure you tune in on Friday night because that's when we're going to give our Super Contest picks and tell you who we picked in the Golden Nugget contest.
Now, one of the things that we can correct from an older live stream is that the Golden Nugget, again, your picks are due Thursday morning if you want to use the Thursday game.
Sure.
Picks don't have to be in until Friday, actually, for the Golden Nugget contest, something we were a little bit concerned about. We thought that maybe we were going to have to submit them earlier in the week. So, yeah, the Friday show is really, the Tuesday show is going to be examining the lines, kind of looking at some of the games where we do like the lines and we have to track the line movement. Friday's live stream, that's where we're making all those picks. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, but the Golden Nugget, it's 5 college and 2 NFL?
I believe so, yes,
yeah.
I believe so. So 5 college and 2 pro, virtually all of which, unless we find something on Friday night. And look, we want to win money, of course, playing in these contests for sure, but we also want to make sure that for people who are watching, and I know a lot of you guys watched last year, a lot, more than I think you and I anticipated. We want to make sure that we give you guys enough time based on our opinions to get down if you want to on these games, and we're not doing you really that service unless we tell you about a line that could possibly move for the weekend. We did that last year too. We would tell you on a Tuesday, hey, if you're going to bet this, do it now. But for us to make our final picks on a Tuesday live stream when we don't have to doesn't really make any sense. So we'll submit them by the deadline, of course, on Friday. The Super Contest is early Saturday morning. And so if you guys go back and you watch last year's live streams and you remember at the end of the live streams on Friday night for the NFL, for our 5-pick Super Contest, Howard would have them all in his phone, and then boom, at the end he would hit send. So I'm assuming that's the same way that we'll do it this year. And of course, it is the first week of the NFL, so we have the Packers and Bears on Thursday night. We have college football on Thursday and Friday night. And then the NFL has, of course, all the games on Sunday night, and then 2 games on Monday, if I'm not mistaken, right? 2 games on Monday like last year?
Yeah, two
Okay.
games on Monday exactly. So, all right, let's start off, man. Let's get a look at some of the lines that we're looking at the most. You want to start college? Or you want to start pro?
Yeah, we'll start off with the college, the big games this week that people are looking at. There's really I really think that there's one really big game, and then there's a lot of intriguing ones, but there's one really big game, and that's the one between LSU and Texas. So LSU is ranked 6th in the country. Texas is ranked 10th. Texas right now is up to a 5-point dog in this one at home. So they're really not getting a ton of respect after their win against Louisiana Tech. And I would tell you that we talked about that here last week. What happens if their defense gets after Louisiana Tech? It could be over early, and it was. It was like 31-0. Louisiana Tech came all the way back and actually had the ball with a chance to cover in this game. In fact, all three of the games that, and this is why I don't feel so bad about last week, all three of the games were a possession from covering. So
well, that's what we talked about last year. Is
yeah,
if you're in it in the fourth quarter and you're a possession away, then you're in it. I mean,
right.
Obviously anything can happen. Our leans went the majority of the way that we wanted them to. So, I mean, again, yeah, you're right.
While I don't have a huge problem with it. That pick, by the way, taking Louisiana Tech against Texas was the worst one of the three, as it turned out, because all Louisiana Tech was trying to do in that game was cover. There was no chance whatsoever for them to win. Texas was by far the better team. But in the other game that I lost, Toledo getting 12 points against Kentucky, Toledo was up 7-0. They were up 14-7, and the game was tied at 14 at the half. And in the third quarter, the quarterback for Toledo got knocked out, and Kentucky ran away with it. And listen, that is part of this game. That's what happens, and you lose in college or in pro. You lose your quarterback. In all likelihood, you're going to lose. Doesn't matter what the spread is. And Kentucky, at that point, they just kept getting the ball back and running right up the field. And so it was a great first half play, fantastic first half play, but a horrible ending for them. Okay, so moving on, LSU against Texas. Tigers obviously looked phenomenal against Georgia Southern. Texas looked really good against Louisiana Tech. Their quarterback, Sam Erlinger, was really solid. Not spectacular, but really solid. This is just a guy, Howard, that's one of those quarterbacks in college that's going to throw the ball not 40 times in a game. He's going to throw the ball like 25 to 30 times, and he's going to complete like 19 or 20 of those passes. He's going to have a very high completion percentage. The line opened up as LSU with a 4-point favorite. It has now moved up to 5. So clearly at this point, Howard, there's not a lot of respect for Texas. And based on the way, again, the SEC beats up against some of these out-of-conference SEC teams. This is, in this case, the Big 12. Until one of these teams beats an SEC team, this is what's going to happen. Southeastern Conference is going to be favored, so they are, of course, in this game. Texas A&M, 13th ranked.
Is there a lean there then? Are we leaning LSU at all?
No, the third game is the only one of these big games that will go. Texas A&M against Clemson. The line opened up at 19.5. Clemson being a favorite, 19.5-point favorite, went down to 17.5. This is the biggest total jump from 59 to 64. So obviously a lot of points are expected in this game. Last year, Texas A&M, the Aggies, they played great against Clemson. Clemson ended up eking it out. They have a much improved defense. Jimbo Fisher's team is really good. Trevor Lawrence didn't look great, but their running back, Travis Etienne, looked phenomenal in week 1 against Georgia Tech. One of the players on Texas A&M said that they're going to go into Clemson and win this week. So we'll see what ends up happening. But the reason why I think this line went down a little bit is a reaction from last week's game where Clemson just rolled all over Georgia Tech in the first half. Then they just kind of shut it down and let the running game take over. And then when that happens in any sport, college or pro, you know that it's going to be harder to cover a big line like that because the team's just going to keep running and trying to run the clock out because they know, why would we put our defense on the field or put anybody in a position to be hurt when we don't need to? And that's the way that could kind of play out there. And then the final game, this one is crazy. So last week, USC's coach is on the hot seat already to begin the season, but their quarterback, JT Daniels, got hurt early in this game and was knocked out for the season. So I'm really unsure of this line. I'm going to have to look a lot closer into it because for me, I thought Stanford would at least this line would be even or maybe even Stanford being a favorite. Now, it did open at 4. USC -4 went down to 3.5. Today, I saw -2.5. So I would guess that by the time this kicks off on late Saturday night, that Stanford could even be a favorite. So I don't know anything about their new quarterback, Keaton Slovis, other than what I've read. I don't know anything about him. He played well against Fresno State to a degree, but this is Stanford now. So the world is going to bet Stanford. The world is going to take those points and bet against USC. The only question is what kind of quarterback and a backup are we going to see here? And again, I don't know a lot about him, and he's the only other scholarship quarterback, I think, that's on their roster. They were really counting on Daniels to have a big season. So he is out for the year. Also, one other notable injury in college football. It doesn't affect this week because they don't play a big team. But South Carolina's quarterback, Jake Bentley, is also out for the year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that with South Carolina and see how their backup quarterback plays this week. I think they play a low-level team that they're going to be a big favorite and probably win anyway. So I don't ever recall in college football two big program quarterbacks being out for the year, but that's where we're at.
Now, so are you saying that you're leaning Stanford here? I mean,
for sure.
USC minus 2.5 at home in USC. I mean, obviously shows no advantage there. No. What would the line have to be in order for you to look at it and say, it might be worthwhile to look into this backup QB?
Right. Well, if I was going to bet Stanford, I would do it now because I don't think that you'll be able to get 3 points on Saturday night. This line is going to keep going down. I think more money is going to come in on Stanford. There would be no bet for me on USC. It would be taking Stanford or no one here because of the element of not knowing who the quarterback is. We've seen, obviously, quarterbacks come in the past. They come into these games, and you don't think they're going to be very good, and they end up being okay. But look, Stanford's a top 25 program in college football, and I suppose they have to make USC of a slight favorite, but that's what gives me a little bit of pause. I was kind of hoping that Stanford would end up being like a 1-point favorite in this one when the line opened up, because that would indicate to me, yeah, okay, this makes sense. But the line doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'll have to check more into it as we get closer to game time.
All right, a couple other games you're looking at. I know you're looking at Miami at North Carolina. Miami right now favored by 6. Mac Brown's first game at UNC. They beat South Carolina, and he's dancing all over the place in the locker room.
You saw that?
I saw it also. Are we rolling with him or what?
Mac Brown? Yeah, well, look, they beat South Carolina's their quarterback got hurt. They'll play Miami this week. Look, this is interesting to think that North Carolina would have a shot in this one, but there's a lot of other dynamics that are going involved. As a lot of you know, I live in South Florida, and of course we were dealing with just waiting for this Hurricane Dorian, who unfortunately just took out all of Grand Bahama and the Bahamas. Just an absolute nightmare. And my prayers for those people for sure. By the time this game kicks off on Saturday, and it is Saturday night, so it does give them some more time, but that's where it looks like the Hurricanes kind of headed up there. So I think the total has adjusted to that. It went from 51 down to 48. So that's a number to circle right there, Howard. Maybe the under in this one. Miami's offense looked dreadful against Florida. North Carolina, I think, would be thrilled to come out of this with a 2017 win. So my early lean on this one, I think that movement is right on that one, and I would probably lean toward the under there. It's very dangerous when you get below 44 or 45 in a college football game because there's so many mistakes that can usually happen. And by the way, UNC made a ton of mistakes in that game against South Carolina, but they were just fortunate, I think, to come out on the winning end there. So I kind of like a lower scoring game. I was surprised that the total opened up at over 50, but I would guess that by the time the game starts, it'll even be lower, 47, 46.
Now, do we have a number of other games that are supposed to be taking place in Florida? Like, I mean,
Florida's good.
If we're dealing with the hurricane, you got Florida, you got Georgia, you got the Carolinas there, Alabama. The question is do we start looking for games in those areas there just to play on the under?
You could, but they could also get canceled. North Carolina State plays against Western Carolina at 12:30, but there's no line on that game. And how could you possibly take Western Carolina in this one after the way NC State looked this past week? They look great. Clemson's South Carolina. They play against Texas A&M. There's no total in that game available. So not bad thinking on your part. Georgia plays Murray State. Howard, so that's a nothing. Alabama's 54.5-point favorites over New Mexico State. I think that your point would be as if this was late September or even in October, and we would have these weather issues. I think we would look more at it, but there's some huge lines, man, in those games in particular. So probably stay.
How do you take Alabama given 54 points? If you're talking about a hurricane type season.
No, I know, but you know what, man? Like you never know. Look, Tennessee was 30-point favorites over Georgia State. They ended up losing this week. But in general, you don't know how those games are going to go. I don't love to take huge points, and I don't like to lay huge points too. I think they're more or less sucker bets. The other thing that happens in Vegas, by the way, is that a lot of times when these lines are so big, Howard, they're called circled games. And that means there's a maximum amount that you can actually bet on these games because there's just so little unknown about the other side, about the other football team. What are they there for? Are they there just to collect a check? Because a lot of these teams are getting paid $1 million just to show up. So you can't even really maximize those bets anyway, even if you did have info on it.
All right. Well, let's look at a couple of other games that you're digging on here in college.
The only other there's a couple of line movement games in the totals. Bowling Green, Kansas State. Since that opened Sunday, that moved up about 3 points. Okay. So that's one other big move there. But as far as other like top 25 games, we kind of I think illustrated the three best games on the board more or less. UCLA is 7-point favorites against San Diego State. They didn't play particularly well against Cincinnati, and we talked about I wanted that over on their win total. I got one good one and one bad one from that because UCLA took a loss, which hurts because that I really would have needed them to beat Cincinnati to get off to a good start. But on the flip side, Virginia Tech was a favorite at Boston College, and they went down. Of course, we went under their season win total for Virginia Tech, so that was a good sign there. Beyond that, a lot of teams playing against teams that don't belong on the same field, honestly, Howard. I think that marquee matchup is LSU Texas for sure. Stanford. Oh, by the way, here it is. So the line now 1.5 USC minus 1.5 just changed.
See, we should have bet that game about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah. So yeah, I had a feeling I had a feeling that this was gonna happen, and you can go check the odds right now. And by the way, I checked these odds at 4:00. And I switched them all because I knew that we were going to do the live stream. And here we are now. Now USC is only a 1.5-point favorite. So you could have gotten 4 points taking Stanford. And now and honestly, if you're going to bet it, you got to do it now still, because by the time this kicks off, we'll be back here on Friday night. Stanford's going to be favored in this game. And it's a bad sign, by the way, for USC that this line is moving that way, because there are smart people that are out there that know these things. I don't always get involved so heavily with line movement. The public side is not always the right side, but there's got to be some concern for the Trojans, and their coach is on the hot seat too. This could just be a lost year for USC. Good for UCLA though.
I'm sure they're psyched. Super psyched.
Yeah, Chip Kelly, man. What a disaster. Jeez.
Right? The anti-Midas touch. Love it, baby. Love it. All right. Well, so there you go. There's a couple of college lines that we're looking at, and we'll throw some picks your way come Friday. Now let's take a look at some of the lines for the NFL, and you've got some concerns here, Craig. You've got number one concern here, Kansas City at Jacksonville. Yeah. Kansas City's favored, only -4 though. You don't like that.
Right. No, and first of all, when we do these live streams, and if you go back and you check our record from last year, you'll see that we had a very good percentage over the course of the year. One of the theories that I always subscribe to, if you're new to this live stream, more in the pros than it is in college, is that when a line looks wrong and it looks like the right side is staring at you in the face so obviously, it's usually the other side that ends up winning, because the public in general is always going to be wrong 80% of the time, 90% of the time. When the public is right and we give our 5 picks for the super contest, that's when Howard and I are going to have a bad week, when the public ends up hitting. We are on the side of the book. That's the way that we're always going to be. We're on the side that looks least obvious, the ugliest picks, the ones you can't stomach to take. And sometimes it takes a week or two of doing this to realize that that is the way to go, because when you look at opening day and look there, we'll go through a couple of these games, but that is the one line that stuck out at me the most. Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and this unbelievable offense of the Kansas City Chiefs coming off a historical season, the MVP. They're going to a team in Jacksonville with a total of 52.5, by the way. Not a low total. This is not like they're saying that it's 39, it's going to be close, and the Jags defense is going to show up. The total is 52.5. I think it's the biggest total on the board this week. Yeah. And the Chiefs are only 4-point favorites. Explain that one to me. You know what that means? The world is going to take Kansas City this week, and we're going to take Jacksonville.
Well, the world is going to take Kansas City here, but let me ask you a question. Does this – I mean, listen, it's fine with me because, you look at Jacksonville, and I think they're a much better team now than they were last year, primarily because of the way the offense is structured right now. I don't love the receivers there, but Nick Foles versus Blake Bortles, a healthy Leonard Fournette, to me, the Jags do have a good spot here. And you look at Kansas City, they finally changed defensive coordinators, and the veteran Bob Sutton no longer with them. So, yeah, there are a lot of moving parts here that kind of favor Jacksonville, not to mention the fact that we don't like this line. Now,
the line is really one of those that you look at and go, oh, like the public will go, oh, my gosh, the Chiefs, all they have to do is win by 4 against Jacksonville. And this is the danger of betting in the NFL. When it looks too good to be true, it always is. So, we'll dive in, obviously, when we get closer. If I had to guess which way the line would go, I probably think the Chiefs become more of a favorite, even by the time Sunday goes off. So that was one of the other lines. The other dog that I looked at this week, just because I think that there's obviously a huge overreaction to Andrew Luck retiring, is the Chargers being 7-point favorites over the Colts at home. And it makes me feel uncomfortable a little bit thinking that the Colts can't cover this one. Like, I don't know. I feel like that Indy can stay in this game with the Chargers, and potentially maybe they really have something to prove. And if they're going to do it, it's going to be this week. It would probably be the kind of thing for me if I took the Colts this week and they got blown out. That would probably be it for me because I would think that they would want to step up. And by the way, there's no East Coast West Coast thing with Indy going to LA because they'll have plenty of time. It's not like they did anything this past week, and they gave Brissett that extension. They showed some faith there. I thought that was a really good statement, although they had a lot of extra money now that Andrew Luck retired. So that was one of the other ones that I was looking at. I like to look at the underdogs first. And then just from a conceptual standpoint, another terrible game, Lions at the Cardinals, Howard, a 4:25 Eastern game. The Lions are 2.5 favorite at the Cardinals. My guess is let's circle this game. Let's not do anything with it. But whoever wins, let's go against them the next week. Because there's going to be some overreaction coming off this game, right? Like,
well, there's definitely going to be, because if Kyler Murray dominates, then everybody's going to freak out, and he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And if Arizona loses this game, everybody's going to just piss all over.
And
Kyler
Detroit
Murray
is great too.
Kingsbury, yeah, and all of a sudden Detroit is great.
Right, and so we'll remember that game for next week.
Sure,
because if Detroit wins 31-10. Then they'll go into their next week game with a little bit of public overreaction there with, the Lions, they look really good against Arizona, and then we're just going to pound it against them the next week. So I'm already thinking ahead to week 2. And I
don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. And listen, I'm with you on the Indianapolis against the Chargers. Chargers had a couple of injuries during the preseason, and all of a sudden this defense does not look good. They've lost guys in their secondary. The only decent player they've got out there is Casey Hayward. So, listen, I still think T.Y. Hilton, Eric Ebron, I think that these guys still can do something. You get Marlon Mack out in the backfield, Nyheim Hines catching passes, you run a bunch of RPOs with Jacoby Brissett, and it does become interesting. Another game that I like here that I'm intrigued by, Baltimore -7 at Miami. Now, listen, you laugh. But if it was Baltimore 7.5, then I'd be like,
I see 6.5. I think you could
get
some.
Miami is atrocious.
Yeah,
atrocious.
You don't have to tell me.
No, I do because they're so bad. Losing Laramie Tunsil on the offensive line is huge. Kenyon Drake sucks. They don't really like using him very much. They're going to be playing from behind. They lost Kenny Stills. So apparently they've got all this confidence in Preston Williams. I don't see it at all here. And you look at Baltimore, and a lot of people are sitting there saying, I don't know what to do about, Lamar Jackson. He didn't look good as a passer last year. The thing is you take a look at the offensive coordinator for Baltimore, and that's Greg Roman. And what did Greg Roman do? Well, he only turned Colin Kaepernick into a decent quarterback in his first season. He went to Buffalo. What did he do with Tyrod Taylor? He actually made him look like a decent quarterback. His specialty are these athletic quarterbacks, these guys who like to run, these guys who are limited passers. And I'm sorry, man, but with Miami as atrocious as they are, this Baltimore defense, I mean, you could legitimately say that the Ravens shut out Miami at home on opening week. And I think that's my big lean right now.
Your big lock lean. Look, I can't. First of all, I can't make any case for Miami. The other thing too is if everything that you're saying comes true, this will probably be the last time that you can go against Miami all year, because the line is going to take a massive move after this week. If what you're saying ends up happening, there's only one factor here that gives me pause, and only one. If this game was anywhere else except for in the heat, I would say you're 100% right. My only fear is that 95 degrees, the stadium is still more or less open air. They cut out the middle now at Hard Rock Stadium. And what happens if the Ravens just wilt because it's just so hot, But I know the Dolphins have to play in it too, but they are used to it. I'm sure that by the time that we come around on Friday, we'll end up taking Baltimore. I mean, it just seems like if you're ever going to do it, it's going to be this week, because Miami and look, in fantasy, I drafted the Ravens defense for this purpose weeks ago in every league that I could. So I'm on board with you there. I certainly would like it to be 6.5 as opposed to 7. And you're right, 7.5 is rough, but we did go under very strongly on their win total for the season, which was 4.5 or 5 in most places. So we definitely can bank on that one now. If you have that ticket, you are cashing that ticket at the end of the season. The Dolphins are not winning 5 games.
No
way.
Definitely
it's not happening.
No.
And they're not trying to win 5 games. So
no. This is we're looking for our franchise quarterback next.
They are. They're absolutely doing the right thing. The problem is they should have done it in the last 20 years twice, and they didn't. And look. Whatever you want to say about Miami and the Dolphins are like, who are they like? They're like the Chiefs. They're like the Jets, the Redskins, the Eagles, the Raiders, the Giants, Cowboys. They're a historical franchise. So it's really hard as a fan base that still hangs on to Dan Marino in 1972 to understand that you're going into a season with no hope. That never happens. Even when the Dolphins were 1-15 about a decade ago with Cam Cameron. I don't know if you remember, he was the head coach one year too. Yeah. They went 1-15. They beat Baltimore, I think, on a block punt or some crazy play. That year they thought they'd be good too. They thought they'd win 7 games, 8 games. But I mean, it's weird in the NFL to have a team with no hope whatsoever. I think there's only 4 teams this year that are like that, and Miami's at the top. But I think Miami, understanding there's no hope there. Cincinnati, they got to understand that they're in a rebuilding situation for sure. As much as Washington probably doesn't want to admit that they're in that situation, the Redskins,
they are.
Yeah, the Redskins are no doubt in that situation also. So I think I had one more team that I was going to mention that were. Oh, in Arizona. Look, if Arizona goes and wins 6 games this year, that's a nice accomplishment for them after the year that they had last year. So there's really 4 teams that you could eliminate, but I think every other team feels like they have a chance, right? Wouldn't you say that?
Maybe. I don't know. You look at Tampa Bay, San Francisco. These aren't teams who I think.
But they think they could win 8 games, maybe. Like, they're not trying to lose 14.
I'm not saying they're not trying to lose 14. I just don't necessarily know if they're 8-win teams. I don't feel that way. I agree. I don't feel that way about Tampa Bay either. A couple other lines, just real quick to get to. For people who are playing in the suicide leagues, the survivor leagues, where you can only pick one team, this is definitely going to come up. I don't know how you see it, Howard, but the 2 biggest favorites on the board are the Eagles -9.5 against the Redskins, and Seattle -9.5 at home against Cincinnati. And so let us see the totals in those games. You want to go probably with the lower total, because the higher total. Cincinnati is a 44 total. Philly, Washington is a 45.5.
Right. So there's like a little bit less confidence in Philly covering than Seattle, because the expectation is with more points, maybe Washington's able to score some on Philadelphia. But look, you were the Seattle whisperer all last year for sure. I didn't have any confidence in them whatsoever. But those are the 2 biggest lines. If you had to make a suicide pool this week, pick Howard, which team would you take amongst? I would take
Seattle over Cincinnati.
I would too.
Absolutely.
I would too.
Run first mentality. Cincy's defense is all busted up. Their offense isn't really that good. Seattle just picks up Jadeveon Clowney on defense. That's going to be big.
They're feeling good.
Put the ball in Chris Carson's hands. I got no problem with Seattle over Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a team that we looked at as at the under for their win total.
For sure.
I have a hard time seeing them win 4 games this year.
For sure. And good like suicide pool technique, by the way, and not just because of Howard's opinion on this, which I think is right. is that if you have two teams and somewhat with the spread, it's a completely different conversation. But if you're playing in those pools, again, where you can only pick one team and then you can't do it again the rest of the season, look, you can try and map this thing out 8 weeks. Half the league could be out by week 2.
Yeah.
If you have the choice, go away from a divisional game. Go to the out-of-conference game with the teams that don't see each other that often. Because let's be honest, the Redskins and Eagles, they play each other a lot. And even though the line is 9.5, would it shock you to see Philly win 31-24? That's not a cover for them there. It could be 31-17 with no time left. Washington scores a touchdown and they get the backdoor cover. So always go out of conference as opposed to in conference. And I think that would also speak to Dallas being 7-point favorites over the Giants in week 1 as well.
Sure. And again, that's another reason why I'm not looking at Philly against Washington there. I don't want to play the divisional game. Washington's defense, a little on the underrated side. I'm not going to say that they could even win this game. I just don't necessarily know if I want to lay that many points.
All right, so no college games Thursday. Let's leave on this note. Do you have any opinion at all on the Thursday night game? We're not going to use this for our super contest. We're going to leave this one out. But by the time we come back Friday, one NFL game will be in the books. Bears and Packers on Thursday night. Bears are -3. Packers, the total is 46. So really no advantage for no home field at all almost for Chicago here. And look, Rodgers has had some incredible comebacks against the Bears too. Any feeling on this one? Feels like just a great game to watch, hopefully, on Thursday night.
Feels like it's going to be a great game to watch. I worry about Chicago's defense. I know everybody thinks that it's the be-all, end-all, but they did lose some guys through free agency and changes in the personnel that the team just wanted to make. I mean, it's a tough one there. I have a hard time going against Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to sit here and make that pick either. If I'm going to lean, I'm probably going to lean Green Bay just for the fact that I have more confidence in their offense than I do really of Chicago's. And I love Chicago's offensive players. I love guys like David Montgomery. I think Trubisky can take another step forward. I just for the sake of this one here and for the fact that they say there's really no home field advantage for the Bears, it kind of makes me wonder.
Yeah, last year in December, the Bears beat the Packers 24-17. Bears cover that one. A game before that, Green Bay beat Chicago 24-23. That was a big one. That was kind of a statement game for the Bears. They showed that they were in it at that point. They went on a crazy run at that right after that. So Bears covered that game. Green Bay beat Chicago 23-16. Going back to 2017, Green Bay beat Chicago 35-21. Completely different team though at that point. And then the Packers beat the Bears a long time ago, 30-27. So I mean, they've been more or less competitive. It seems as though some of these games have gone over more than they have in the past. So maybe that's a little bit of a lean to the over on this one. 46 points on Thursday night. I'm more of an under guy, as you know, than an over guy, but it is the first game of the year, and maybe there are some fireworks there between the Packers and Bears. Trubisky's got to be a little bit better than he was last year. Seems like he's got some decent offensive weapons. We know what Rodgers can do, and even in games where Rodgers could be trailing in one 27-14, this guy could bring you back in a heartbeat. So we'll just, I guess, enjoy the game on Thursday night, and then we'll be back on Friday. We'll give our picks.
That sounds good to me. All right. So that's going to do it for us here at the Wager Alarm live stream. We will be back on Friday making picks for college and the NFL. So stick around. Join us then. For Craig Mish, big thanks to our producer, Matt Sells. I'm Howard Bennett. This has been the Wager Alarm live stream. We'll catch you next time.